Hello and blessings to you. In this video, we'll go over chapter 27 of the first Hebrew primer, and we'll be talking about verbs with object suffixes. Now, we've seen this, I think, a few times already in our guided reading over the book of Ruth, but they gave you the translation of these words because we had not yet covered it. Before we begin, I want to go through some of these oral review. I'm kind of tempted to do the whole thing because it is a little short, but maybe we'll stop short of all of them. So starting up here at the top, we have davar lachokum, and this means something along the lines of a word to, and here we have the article here, the wise one. So maybe it's a play on like a word to the wise or something like that. Starting over here on exercise 1, we have etzim va avenim yishvaru et atzmotai ak shemot lo yaku oti. And this is wood, plural, so maybe we could say sticks, kind of looking ahead, sticks and stones, yishvaru. So we see that this is an imperfect, a third imperfect, and plural. So a 3ms, 3mp form in the imperfect of shavar, to break. So sticks and stones will break, or they will break. So sticks and stones will break. Et atzmotai, so this could be essence or bones, and kind of seeing where we come from, we know this is bones. We have a first person singular pronominal suffix at the end. So my bones, sticks and stones will break my bones. Ak, but, shamot, names, lo yaku, will not, and this is strike. So this is our verb that is a very, very irregular. It comes from nakah, and it begins with a noon, which is a weak letter, and it ends with a hey, which is a weak letter, and so often all we're left with is this kaf. Okay. Still though, if we were to diagnose this, looking at the beginning, we can guess this is probably a third imperfect because of the yod, a third person imperfect, and we see it's specifically a plural, so a third plural masculine verb in the imperfect, with just this kaf left. And because all there is a kaf, that alone kind of tips me off that this is nakah, strike, just knowing how it infamously loses both its first and last letter and just leaves the kaf. So names, they will not strike ot. Here's our direct object marker with a first common singular pronominal suffix, so we could say me. So sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will not strike me. Okay. Now obviously I think this is a misuse of the word names. I don't think it's used as names as in like calling people names as it is in English, but still we can kind of see where the authors are going with this. It's pretty fun. Number 2, we have im ein lechem ein Torah. So this is if there is not bread or food, there is not Torah or law. So probably it's food and law. If there is no food, there is no law. Okay. Number 3, we have Hashomer Achi Anoki. And so we see we have the interrogative hey here. So we know this is a question, don't really need this question mark thrown in. So shomer, we see that this is a participle, an active participle with an O class vowel between the first and second root letters, of shamar, guard, So this is perhaps guardian or guard or keeper. So a question, keeper, aki, this is pronominal suffix my, it's a first common singular, of ak, brother. If you remember, the way I remember this is ach, brother. So ach is brother, so my brother. And then anoki, I. So it's a question, guardian of my brother am I. So between the first two we have a word pair, and between the second two we have a noun sentence, right? So in a word pair, pronominal suffix, the definiteness of this gets pulled to the beginning. So we have the guardian of my brother am I, and then rearranging that into good English, we might say, am I my brother's guardian? Or keeper might be a translation you're more used to for Genesis 4:9. Okay, next one. Eshet chayil mi yimtza. So, a woman or wife of strength, who will find? So, who will find a woman of strength? Proverbs 31 is the context of that. Number 5, we have 8 he kesef, pretty straightforward. Time, he, is our pronoun for she or it, right? And then money. So literally we have something like time, it, money. But we remember that this pronoun then can shift into, or rather, not shift, it rather signifies that this is a noun sentence and it's redundant, so in English we'll leave it out. So literally we might have time is money. Okay, number 6. Im ein anoki li, mi li, va'im ani rak la'atzmi, ma ani. Okay, so this is if literally there is not I for me. If you remember, a way that we can translate this phrase, this particle with a pronoun is just kind of as a present tense verb. So if I am not for me, li, we have the preposition to or for me, who is for me? And if I only, and if I am, maybe we'll say, am only, for, here we have atzmi, so we have a pronominal suffix at the end, we have a lamed preposition at the beginning, and in the middle we have atzam, which is bone or essence. So, and if I am only for my, maybe essence, we might even say myself, what am I? So that's kind of fun. You can see the difference between me, who, ma, what. Okay, next one. Raid Moshe el Aretz Mitzrayim. Haged la Pharao Hazeken la Shalach et Ami. So here we have raid. Kind of looks funny at first, okay? Kind of have to take a couple steps back from it. This is, raid comes from yarad, to go down or descend, and this is our command form, remember from the imperfect, which drops the yod, and then in the command form itself, the signal letters are then lost. So Basically, the yoda's dropped out and nothing has replaced it. So moving on from this, we have raid. So go down as a command. You go down, Moses. So Moses, go down to, here we have a word pair, so I'll bring into the first word the definiteness, the land of Egypt. Hagade, so similar thing happening here. This is normally a hithiel. Okay, this comes from the word nagad, to tell or declare, which is typically found in the hithiel stem. So this also is a command, same second person command, so Moses is probably still the subject over here. And in the hithiel, we get this hey out front. So hagade, so tell, lefarao hazakin. So tell to Pharaoh, the old one. So tell to the old Pharaoh, la shalach et ami. Okay, so we see that this is an infinitive because this lamed out front preposition tips us off, so specifically an infinitive construct. Leshalach, we see that this is a PL because of this dagesh in the second root letter, right? So instead of just to send my people, it's intensified and maybe has the idea of set free. So to set free, ami, pronominal suffix on people, so my people. Okay. I think maybe we've spent enough time on these oral review exercises. This next one is it looks like a popular, we'll just do it. Okay, number 8. So Lizzie Borden. So these are not Hebrew words. These are names kind of transliterated into Hebrew. Lizzie Borden, lachcha. So this is just a pa'al perfect from lakak. It's a 3fs form, so she took. So Lizzie Borden took a sword. Natna, so she gave. La'ima, to her mother. Arba'im, so you can see we have the word for 4 here, made plural. And when that happens, in this case it will be 40. So it becomes kind of a tens place in mathematically speaking. So arba'im makut. So again, we have the word for strike here. We can see that it is a participle. Actually, I think, was it the last chapter? We talked about this word just becoming a word in its own right because it's used. Yeah, here we go. So it just becomes like a hard blow, a hit, a plague, a strike, something like that. She gave to her mother 40 hits. We can see it's plural. Bariota. Okay, so let's slow down. We can see there's a lot happening with this. This, we can see, maybe we'll see that this is the verb to see, right? Ra'ah, but because it has a preposition attached to it, now we're thinking infinitive construct, right? And the bait preposition in particular is maybe like when or in. So in seeing, or when she saw, something along those lines, what she did, she gave to her father 40 and 1. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this kind of rhyme, but it's kind of a morbid rhyme. Lizzie Borden took an axe, she gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. It's kind of what this is trying to play off of. Not really sure why our authors included this under words to the wise, but interesting. Okay, well, let's jump on down to our vocabulary and get on with the rest of this chapter. So, first word, ate, and this just means with. Now, if you are paying attention and perceptive, you'll notice that this is exactly like our direct article, or I'm sorry, our direct object marker. We'll talk about this more at the end of this chapter, but keep your eye out for this. Next is a verb. Asaf in the pa'al pattern means to gather. Chaya in pa'al means to live. Notice that this looks very, very similar to haya, which is our be verb. The only thing missing is a little gap right here. Okay, most of its forms will follow the pattern of haya, and so it will be critically important for you to distinguish these two from one another. Now, our to be verb is vastly more common than haya, and that's probably why we've learned it first. But also context will help you tell the difference between these two. So, yeah, well, I'll leave it at that. Next, Yasaf, my namesake. So in the Hiphil, it gives you a note this is a transformer verb, which you probably could have guessed because it's a first yod, right? So in the Hiphil, it might look like, I don't know, Hosif, something like that. Means continue or add. So easy to remember because in that narrative, Rachel says something along the lines of, may the Lord, or maybe the Lord has added to my family, or I forget if it's like, may the Lord continue to add. I forget, but that's the reason she chose the name Joseph. So hopefully that will help you remember. Yara, Yod Resh Aleph in the Pa'al means to fear or be in awe of. Notice this one can get a little confusing because it looks like our see verb. This didn't turn out well. Ra'ah, right? Especially in the imperfect, if we add a yod up here, and sometimes this hey drops off anyways, we'll get verbs that look pretty similar to one another. So again, just be careful in your exercises and as you move to translation in the Bible to be able to distinguish these two. Next is karat. In the pa'al means to cut. This is one of my favorite words because the way I remember it is karate. Maybe you karate chop something and you're like cutting it. I just think that this is rather fun, but karat means to cut. Also, I guess another way to remember it is like a carat. Maybe you can think of like cutting diamonds to be certain shapes to look like gemstones. I don't know. There's probably something there. So that's in the pa'al, means cut. In the hifil, so if you cause to cut, it really carries the weight of destroy. So you've like destroyed it. Okay. Next is nasa and the pa'al pattern. Nasa, noon, sin, aleph means to lift or carry. Not sure if this will help you, but the way I remember this is through like Batman comic and TV shows. If you've heard of Resh al Ghul, which means head of the demon, you can see that's related to Rosh, head, or top chief, something along those lines. He has a daughter named Nissa al Ghul, and for some reason that helps me remember Nissa. Maybe she carries on his legacy or something. I don't know. It helps me. Maybe it'll help you. Next word, Allah, in the pa'al means to go up or descend. I'm not confident that this is related to the Arabic word for God, but it at least helps me remember that it's to go up or ascend. I might be wrong, but I think that Allah, the Arabic word for God, is something about being the most high or something along those lines. And in Hebrew, there's another word, Elyon, in Aramaic, which also means something along those lines, like most high, which is a way of talking about God. So maybe something in there you can pull out and maybe that'll help you. But so it means go up or ascend in the pa'a. And the hifil, of course, would be cause to go up, which we might then take a further step and say raise. So if you cause a platform to go up, you are raising the platform or something like that. Okay. A couple quick notes. We already talked about khaya, but nisa, as you probably would expect, is a drop letter because of this noon. Weak letter will drop out. Couple idioms really fast. So in the Bible, when you make a covenant, literally it is karat barit. Okay, he cut a covenant. And probably the image you can think of is Genesis 15, when Abram takes the different animals and stuff and he cuts them in half, puts half over here, and then God and Abram walk through those halves. That's how they made their covenant. I think that is the background behind this phrase, to cut a covenant, because you cut the animals in half and then you walk through them. But our authors also give us this idea of like cutting a deal, maybe, is a modern interpretation of that. And then nasa naim would be to lift one's eyes or to look up. So maybe in our Psalms of Ascents, we have that phrase, I lift my eyes up to the hills. Where does my help come from? That's this phrase right here. And literally, well, not literally, but then we might interpretively take that a step and say it just means look up. Okay, so I look up to the hills. Where does my help come from? Okay, well, so getting on to the lesson now. We'll be talking about verbs with object suffixes. So, direct objects, pronouns, can be expressed in two ways in Hebrew. We've already learned one way, and that is with our direct object marker with a pronominal suffix. So, hu shamar oti, so he guarded me. Haim yishmru otanu, they will guard us. Shamarti otka, I guarded you. Okay, so we're already familiar with this. You can also put our pronoun endings directly onto the verb. So for instance, shamarni would be he guarded me. Yishmarunu, sorry, so Yishmarunu is they guarded us. And you can kind of see this line between the two sides. Wish that was a little thinner. And then Shamartika, I guarded you. So again, you can kind of see right here is our dividing line. I guarded you. Okay, so, and then I guess the author just wants to make a note. The authors are going to call these object suffixes. Still, I'm going to probably keep referring to them as pronominal suffixes because they are pronouns that are suffixed to the word. So that's how you'll hear me talk about these. So the suffixes are the same as the pronoun endings for the most part. Now there are two forms, and we'll talk about those down here, that are just a little bit different, but it makes sense why. So we'll get to that. Let's look at these examples though. We have katavta otam, okay? So she wrote them, right? author's just kind of showing you this intermediary step of what you might be able to do. Kind of basically you take this away and add these two together and you end up with this. So katav tam, right? So you wrote them. Okay. Then we have Yishmor Otka. He will guard you, right? Same process, kind of take these away, and then we could get Yishmarka. So he will guard you. Now notice it's pretty easy to distinguish a second person, both masculine and feminine, singular, for the verbal ending and a pronominal suffix ending. In the verb, it's going to be a tav, right? So we might have something like this or something like this. And our pronominal suffix will be a final kaf. So it might look like this or it might look like this. Okay, so I think you should have enough familiarity now with the endings and with the pronominal suffixes to see both how these are similar and related to one another, but also that they are distinct. So if you had something like shamartika, you guarded you, or something kind of strange like that, it's easy to kind of see both endings there. So I guess I could have left all this, but let's keep going through these. So we have Tsiva Otanu. So notice in this one, also this hey drops out because it's weak and it's by itself. It just becomes Tsivanu. So he commanded us. So there can be some other changes, is what you can see here, with weak letters that have kind of no value. And in fact, this is even just a vowel letter at this point. Okay, then we have Mavarkim Otka. And you can see this is a participle of plural masculine participle. So they're saying they are blessing you, is how we might interpret this. Notice here we do have some more changes. The mem kind of dropped off of this participle. Okay, and then Havu Otam. We can see that this is a hiphil hollow verb bo. It's a plural, a third plural, so something like they caused to come, or they brought, so they brought them, and then havium. Okay. So, well, I'm sure not many of you will think that this is fun from your feedback in class. I think at least it is, I think at least you should be able to track that, what is happening based off of the other things that we've learned up to this point. Now there are two kind of variations to the regular pronominal suffix endings. Okay, the first one is the first common singular. So normally this will be a hirik yod ending. Well, when attached to a verb, it becomes a noon hirik yod. Okay, and the reason is because most verbs will end in a kind of open vowel sort of situation. And you cannot add two vowels to one another. So for instance, in this first example, we can't have matsui, so we couldn't do something like this, matsui. In Hebrew, that just doesn't work out. You can't put a hirik underneath a shurik, right? And so to be able to add the hirik yod at all, really another letter was needed, and for whatever reason they chose noon here. So then it becomes matsuni. Just helps them articulate both separate sounds here at the end of the word. So matsuni would be they found me. Okay. The other one is our third masculine singular. It's the same kind of deal. Normally, it is a holamvav, right? Well, when attached to the end of a verb, it becomes a hey shurik. Now this, at first glance, is a little different than this first one over here. This holamvav turns into a shurik instead, which is kind of weird, but maybe you'll be able to remember it because it looks a lot like who, right? So who is our 3ms pronoun already. Who is he, if you remember that mnemonic device. So this who is already kind of related to this form. And because we can't have something like here, yamituo, yamituo wouldn't work in Hebrew. And so then it becomes yamituhu. Okay, so while it's different, while both of these are different, I think that they still make sense, and I hope that you're able to see that and kind of record this in your memory. For me, what's most helpful is kind of relating it to the who, meaning he. Okay. And I will encourage you to read over this a few times to kind of, especially this column, this last column, to kind of gain that familiarity with these pronominal suffixes on the end of verbs. And what's also neat is all of these examples in this third column do appear in the Bible. So you're already one step closer to your translation. So that's fun. Okay, so I will go over these. So they've given us the pronominal suffixes on the end of two forms of our shamar verb. So shamru, so this is 3NP, perfect, they guarded, and yishmru, again 3NP, but this time imperfect, they will guard. Okay, so let's kind of go down and hear what these sound like to kind of hear the cadence of this. So we have, shamaruni. So shamaruni is they guarded me. Shamaruka, they guarded you. Shamaruk, they guarded you. Shamaruhu, they guarded him. Shamaruha, they guarded her. Shamarunu, they guarded us. Shamarukim, they guarded you all. Notice they're not giving us the plural feminine forms for whatever reason. So skipping down to the third masculine plural, we get shamarum. Okay. Now in the imperfect, same thing going on. Yishmeruni, they will guard me. Yishmeruka, they will guard you. Yishmaruk, they will guard you. Yishmaruhu, they will guard him. Yishmaruha, they will guard her. Yishmarunu, they will guard us. Yishmarukim, they will guard you. Yishmarum, they will guard them. Okay. So I think our pronominal suffixes, while it is different and there are some unexpected changes, and it is one more thing to be on the lookout for, I do think that it is fairly straightforward, and for the most part you're not having to memorize new paradigms. More, you just need to be aware that this is a possibility, and to not jump to conclusions when you see just the ending of a word, especially if it's more letters than you think it should be. So remember, our roots are just 3 letters. And so when you have too much, especially going on at the end, then you might think, this is probably a pronominal suffix. And just kind of leaving that possibility open in your mind will help you as you move towards translation. So let's talk about our verb Allah. It's frequently used in the hifial pattern, so if you remember, this will mean something like cause to go up or even raise, right? This chart is mainly for your benefit to be able to see that for our verb Allah, in the imperfect, both the pa'al and the hifial actually share many forms. Okay, so our first one is not the case. There are some slight vowel differences, although unless you're attuned to those differences, they still might be confusing. But notice our second person forms are exactly the same. Our third person singular forms are exactly the same. Our first plural is the same. Second plural is the same. Third plural is the same. So we'll really have to, and look, even the clipped form is the same for both the hifial and the pa'al patterns. So when you come across this word in the wild, as we might say, especially in the imperfect, because we're missing this characteristic hey in most forms, or the mem in commands, you'll just need to be attuned to the possibility that this could be either the pa'al imperfect or the hifial imperfect. So keep that in mind. And your biggest help in this will, of course, be context. It's by context that we'll be able to know the difference between any of that. Also, another kind of helpful hint that you might have to refer back to this to remember, unless you can just commit it to memory now. The pa'al is normally, not always, but normally followed by a preposition, and the hifial for Allah is normally with a direct object of some form. So maybe et, maybe otai, maybe directly appended to the ending. So that could help as you try to distinguish these. Okay, last thing, and then we're done with this chapter. I mentioned it earlier in our vocab. Et, or et, with, or together with, looks exactly like our direct object marker, right? And it is a complete synonym to a word that we already know, im. So im is also with or together with. So how do we distinguish the two? How do we know if we come across et, how do we know it's the direct object marker, or how do we know that it's the preposition? Well, if it has an ending, that's actually super easy because our direct object marker turns into this kind of weird holam vav mixture kind of thing going on. So we have ot, or just a holam, I forget. It could just be a holam. So we have this O sound in it, while the preposition will just kind of do exactly what you would expect it to. So iti, itka, itak, ito, ita, itanu, itkem, itam. Okay, so this is kind of what we would expect with a preposition with a pronominal suffix. So pretty easy. So easy to distinguish the two if they have a pronominal suffix. If they don't have a pronominal suffix, then it's just by context that we'll be able to understand what's going on. So some examples of this. David ra'a et Rachel. David saw Rachel. So maybe we could err and say David saw with Rachel, and then think, well, that doesn't make any sense. This is probably just the direct object marker. And so then kind of settle on David saw Rachel. Second example, David halak et Rachel. David walked, and then let's kind of err first so we can see this. David walked Rachel as the direct object marker. that doesn't really make any sense. Rachel's probably not a dog in this case. So it's David halak et Rachel. So David walked with Rachel. So through context, these are very different words. And so through the context of your translation, you should be able to tell the difference between them. And if not, then just when you translate them, if it doesn't make any sense, maybe opt for the other one. So, well, that's it for this chapter. Blessings to you. Hope you have a great day.